right, now welcome everyone. It's now 6:32 p.m. I'd like to call to order the Fenton Township Board meeting on this 15th day of April 2025. I would ask everyone to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Tom, will you please call the roll?
Lorraine.
Present.
Krug is absent. Tucker.
Present.
Clark.
Present.
Gopel is absent. Kessler.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
5 board members present.
All right, thanks, Tom. I'd like to note for the record the Township Attorney Jack Belzer, our Operations Manager Tom Broker, our Zoning Administrator Mike Deem are present this evening. Additionally,
Chief.
no, I see,
Just Chief.
Lawrence.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, there she, I'm sorry. Additionally, the following township officials are present via Zoom, our township engineers, Alan and Melissa Lawrence. Tom, will you detail the procedures for those attending tonight's virtual meeting?
Yes, to the members of the public attending tonight's meeting in person or via Zoom, please be advised this meeting is being recorded to be shown on public access TV, Spectrum Channel 191. Recorded meetings are also posted on the Fenton Area Community Television YouTube channel. For those attending via Zoom, we ask that you keep your microphone muted until we reach portions of the meeting where public comment is allowed. For tonight's meeting, there are no public hearings, therefore all public comment will be taken near the end of the meeting. Meeting materials are available for download on the Township's website at fentontownship.org.
All right, thanks, Tom. Moving on to the first business in order is the approval of the agenda. I request tonight to amend tonight's agenda. Hearing that a motion is in order to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Tom, will you please call the roll?
Lorraine.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Krug is absent. Kessler.
Yes.
Gopel is absent. Tucker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, the agenda stands approved as presented. The next business order is the meeting minutes. Included in the packet are the meeting minutes from the April 1st regular meeting. Are there any corrections or requested revisions to these meeting minutes? Hearing none, the meeting minutes stand approved as presented. Tonight we have a presentation from Fenton Genesee Group. It's called Forward Together. I'd like to introduce Christina Johnson from the Fenton Genesee Group to give us a presentation.
Thank you. Thanks
Welcome.
for having me. Thanks. I can't remember if I have given this presentation to you before, but I was making the rounds with this a couple of years ago, and we've got updated data. If I haven't, you haven't missed a ton. We're got great news for you tonight. So just to give you a little background, as I was introduced, Christina Johnson, I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Fenton Genesee Group. We are an economic development organization. We serve the county. We house 4 divisions: the Fenton Genesee Chamber, Fenton Genesee Economic Alliance, Fenton Genesee Education and Talent, and Explore Fenton Genesee, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau for Genesee County. We, several years ago, came together with leadership from the City of Flint and Genesee County to create one common vision for economic vitality for Genesee County. We kind of realized there was a whole lot of organizations who were working on various pieces of economic development, but not all necessarily heading in the same direction or with the same end goals in mind. So back in 2018, we started a journey together. We brought in a third-party facilitator to convene the public. We had 350 people join us back at Baker College, remember that? and give us input on what they thought vitality would look like economically for our community. We brought together various sectors and leaders from across the county, geographic, demographic, a whole bunch of diverse perspectives to help us land on what we could all kind of get behind as a goal statement. That vision that was generated is on the screen, that by 2040, Genesee County would be a top 5 community in Michigan based on jobs, talent, livability, and equity. Why top 5? Genesee County is the 5th most populous county out of the 83 counties in the state of Michigan. So we figured, why not live in that top 5-ness and all of those various categories that we might consider to be economic advancement. Next slide. Okay, so when we said top 5, we said let's rank ourselves as compared to those other 83 counties and determine in these 5 particular areas of interest: average wages, net in-migration, educational attainment, GDP growth rate, and family poverty rate. Where do we rank? So we started off kind of looking at what was the current state, and we set that goal to be in that top 5. What you have here is a current day, well, as current as the data can get. It's always a lag. So you can see the years up there, so really 2023 data and where we rank. I'll give you some of the history behind these rankings and where we've moved in the next few slides. But as you can see, we're not in top 5. We have till 2040, that's the goal. And in some cases, we've got a long ways to go. There is a little bit of optimism in here, so I will get to that. But as you can see, there are some things that we as a community need to work on. I'm here in front of you as a municipality who's making decisions about zoning, about the quality of life for your residents and the type of vision you have for yourselves. I'm making the rounds to all of the various municipalities in hopes that everyone kind of finds their way and sees themselves in this vision and how you want to see your growth head in these directions. Doesn't have to cover every single thing, but we want you to make informed decisions as you are doing that. So as you can see, 23rd in average wages, 77th in net immigration, we'll talk about that. Educational attainment, 32nd, 48th in GDP growth, and 75th in family poverty. Next slide. Okay, so I mentioned that I'd give you some trends. You do get to keep these little books. This presentation is available online if you need to revisit this, along with all the source data. So if you want to dig in or you're writing grants or something, it's all out there. I did want to give you a little background. So 23rd, we would need to add about $257 a week to head into top 5 and hope that all the other folks ahead of us don't make any gains because you got to keep up with them. What you can see is that when we started this project back in 2019, we were 22nd. We, of course, have grown. You can see that chart has moved up, so wages have gone up, but we have fallen one spot in the rankings, which tells us that other communities have grown a little bit faster than us in terms of wages. The good news is that 9 of the 10 largest counties in the state of Michigan have had gains, and Genesee County has had the greatest gains in the last quarter from 2022 to 2023. So Genesee County gained 6.1%. The next closest was 4.7. We're on a rise that is faster than the other large communities in the state of Michigan. Other top 5, Oakland County, Wayne County, Washtenaw, Midland, and Macomb. Not terribly surprising. They also fall in the higher GDPs. They have higher populations, so it kind of stands true that they probably would have higher wages as well. We can see we are gaining, kind of headed back to our pre-COVID status, and we're on the rise. So good news there. I do want to note that in the vision statement, we talked about equity. So what I'm giving you are county-wide data. We also spend a lot of time breaking that down, and we do want to understand where there are disparities. So just to kind of give you a sense for earnings, median household earnings, in a white household, typically the earnings are $68,541 on the median average. In the black households, it is $33,550, and in Hispanic households, $59,000. So significant variables there, depending on the background of the individuals, which stands to kind of point to different solutions and interventions. I'll kind of give you some of that as we go through the presentation as well. Next slide. Okay, net migration. This one is really about the number of people that we gain and lose over time in our county. We're on the downslide. We lose more people than we gain each year. We're actually 77th out of 83 counties, and the state of Michigan has been hanging around the bottom of the 50 states as well. So the state of Michigan's losing population, and we're on the bottom end of the state of Michigan. So this is a huge concern. It's the population loss. I was saying the last time I gave this presentation was the biggest concern we have about our economic future. We need more people. We need more qualified people. We need the people that we have to be more qualified. So those are some of the things that we need to work on as a community. But there are some points that I thought were interesting this time around as we looked at the numbers. First of all, you can see that we lost more people. So when you look at that little downtrend, we lost more people than we were back when we originally started. However, we've moved up in the rankings. So that means other counties lost more than we did. Not a good thing, but something that we thought was an interesting trend. Also, if you look at the top 5, they're really small. Ottawa, Livingston, Lapeer, Muskegon, and Barrie, you can move up a little more easily, and those communities got more room to grow. It's also notable that they are neighbors. Those counties are neighbors to larger metropolitan areas. And they can you can see the movement up in those neighboring counties when you see growth in the ones in the metro areas they're next to. And you'll notice Livingston and Lapeer are our neighbors, and both of them made top 5. I do want to point out Shiawassee County. My prediction is Shiawassee County will be in top 5 to 10 years, maybe less. And I say that because, number one, they're next door to us. Number two, we can see some growth for us, and people tend to move into the areas that are next door. If you look at their trajectory in 2018, Shiawassee County was 48th. By 2021, they'd moved to 37th. And in 2023, they were at 11th. This means we're doing well when they're doing well. It also kind of tells the story that economic growth is not confined by geography. So a business can come into an area, and the folks who work in that business might live somewhere else. So we should care about the well-being of our neighbors. We want to know Shiawassee County's growth because it speaks to our growth, and vice versa. It's also notable that the other counties that rank in the bottom of net migration are also the higher population, higher GDP communities. So we're kind of following suit with our friends from Wayne, Oakland, Kent, Washtenaw, etc. Okay, next slide. Educational attainment. This one is one that I'm very passionate about and one that's concerning. So you can see when we started, the educational attainment, that's for residents over the age of 25 that have a post-secondary degree, was about 32.4%. We've moved around a little bit in here. Have grown and fallen just a little bit in that achievement to 34%, but you'll notice we fell in the rankings. So while we've grown, we've fallen as compared to the other counties. I do think that part of that has to do with the fact that potentially it's the loss of population. Educated people moved out of Genesee County. So I don't know that I think this is a huge reflection of, our education system is doing worse off than it did in 2018. I think we saw educated folks move out of our community, particularly during COVID, and it lowered our educational attainment numbers. I also want to note that the state of Michigan has an initiative called 60 by 30, where their goal is that 60% of Michiganders would have a post-secondary degree by the year 2030, a little shorter horizon than us. Genesee County shares that goal of 60%. You can see we're at 34. And actually, when I did some research, I learned that it's actually a national goal as well. The Lumina Foundation did some national statistics and determined that the U.S. is actually 54.3% for educational attainment, so compared to our 34, and Michigan is 51.1%. All of them are aiming for 60. So 60 is the magic number. The state's number of 60 includes certificates. That is not captured in this number. They say you can add about 7%. I think Genesee County, you could add a little bit more because we've got an industry that begs for certifications. So just something to make a note of. If you see that top 5, if you notice what I notice, they are where there's major universities or pretty wealthy communities, which usually educational attainment has a correlation to household income. So thought that was a little interesting. We will forge our way to top 5. Knowing that there are some factors that will have an advantage to other communities. Okay, next slide. Okay, GDP growth rate. When we originally brought our steering committee together to select these specific things to measure, this was when we thought we would be able to see growth as opposed to being kind of stuck at our GDP level. In retrospect, it's a very volatile metric. The smallest communities tend to have the most movement up and down. One project can dramatically change their GDP. Because we are a larger GDP, we are 9th in the state of Michigan, we probably should have used GDP just as our metric. So we are going to be reconvening that group and assessing whether or not we kind of look at that metric in addition to or in place of the growth rate. But as you can see, we're 48th. We've moved all around, is in 70th in some cases in very short periods of time. That has everything to do with the other communities and how big or small their projects have been to grow them. So this one is a little bit interesting, but also one we would change. When we have some large projects come into the area, that could dramatically change our position. And we've been hanging out at 9th for a while, so it's a tough one to move, but once you get there, you can hopefully maintain that because it's not one that moves a lot. Let's see. Okay, next slide. Family poverty rate. Okay, this one is sad. 75th out of 83 counties. This is no good. We've got to make improvements here, but there is a little point of optimism. If you look at that trend line, the thicker dotted line is the state, and the thinner dotted line is the U.S. When we started looking at this, we were doing worse off than the state and the country, and we have actually made more progress than both of them. We're right around the U.S. average in terms of the family poverty rate. So that bodes well. We're headed in the right direction, but 75th is not where we want to be. For additional context, breaking that down again for that equity piece, in Genesee County, black communities, 29% of our black families are living in poverty. 32% of our Hispanic families are living in poverty, and 9% of our white families are in poverty. And as compared to the state, black families is 7.3%, Hispanic is 8.4%, and white is 4.2%. So Genesee County has higher levels of poverty across the board, but also when you break that down demographically, significantly bigger disparities. Okay, there are a few things that we want to measure that we don't really look at as compared to other counties, but want to have a better understanding of how economic vitality is or is not impacting people. So what you see here is a scorecard. The good news, you see a lot of green arrows on there. And the one red arrow that you see is an important one, but one that is very difficult to get updated data on. So I would venture a guess it might be green by now, but we don't know. They don't collect it very frequently. The one that is red, economic mobility, is the likelihood of somebody born in the bottom 10% of socioeconomic status to make their way into the top 10%. Somebody in that situation is less likely in 2020 as they were in 2014 to make that movement. So it's harder for folks born in poverty to move out of poverty. That's discouraging given our family poverty rates. Median household income, however, is up slightly. Workforce participation rate is up very slightly, and these are as compared to the previous year. SNAP recipients, those are folks receiving food supports, are down. Private establishments, this one is about new businesses. So our organization supports small business development, entrepreneurs, people who are looking to build a new business. And one of the things that we saw and that we learned when we did this study was Genesee County is often described as gritty or resilient. And one way to measure that is to look at new business growth when there's economic downturns. And our consultants who work across the country said that was something that they saw in our community more than most, which is when times were tough, we build businesses. So this one is a really interesting one to watch and is unique to us, and we can see that. We saw it significantly during the pandemic. It's launched a whole ecosystem of supports for small businesses in Flint. We actually have a little satellite office in the Fenton chamber, so there's a lot of folks who are trying to make their own way, so that one's a good one to watch. Total jobs are up. Third grade reading proficiency, up, but barely, and it's not great. So this is one that when we're talking about predicting things like the likelihood of coming out of poverty over time, or graduating from high school, or moving into that higher educational attainment category, it can be a predictor here when we see lower third grade reading proficiency levels. So it's really important that we're intervening before third grade to help improve those, but also you can see there's a lot of students in that 3rd to 12th grade that need interventions to help make those chances of success higher. Okay, next slide. Okay, here's my key takeaways. Optimism. I know I just left you on a sad note, but we can do stuff about this. We can work together, we can head in certain directions that are going to help improve quality of life and head us toward economic vitality. Nearly every dashboard metric is green, the arrows are green. We are seeing stability. We're pretty close to our pre-COVID rankings, and the growth trajectory is actually higher in some cases than our peers. There are some transformational projects in the works that could push a lot of those dashboard metrics up, create lots of jobs, much higher incomes, and help move us into that closer to the top 5 ranking. I mentioned this already. Economic development does not know geography, so we should be celebrating each other. When jobs are coming to one community, it means they're going to attract people. It means that the people living in the neighboring community could have a new job. It's It's gonna push wages up because the businesses all have to compete for that talent. So we really wanna be conscientious of our peers and our neighbors and make sure that we're looking at opportunities to fill the gaps and to be kind of complementary to the growth around us. Equity needs to be prioritized. I made some of the case here that we're seeing huge disparities. Individuals and communities and demographics and geographies that need extra attention, that need that extra push to help make the movement into feeling the success that we can see we're in that trajectory. And then the other thing is demand is increasing, jobs and wages are going up, but we need to improve the supply. We need more people and places that they want to live. That's where you guys come in. Great place to live. I was a Lake Fenton grad, yay Fenton Township. And so it's continuing to develop what you have as an asset, which is your place, being a place where people want to live, creating jobs in your community. These are all a part of helping that supply. Okay, so how can partners help? This is a new addition to the presentation. It is not an all-inclusive list. I'm not going to go through every single page because I'm here with a municipality, so we'll kind of leave it at that. But housing development, one of the things that we are sorely in need of in Genesee County is housing currently, but also when we see job creation and transformational projects coming into our community, that's going to attract people, and we need people. We can see that. We're low in the rankings for people. We need a place for them to live. So encouraging, zoning for, and removing barriers to housing development is a role that municipalities can play. Create great places that attract young workers. We need young workers. And they're looking for vitality. They're looking for ways to engage in their community. They're looking to volunteer. They're thinking about their school systems. They're thinking about nightlife. They're thinking about parks and recreation and all of the things that they want to have in that time when they're not in work. So that's something for you to consider as you're making choices around investments. Watch your neighboring communities. As I said, growth is not confined to geographic borders. I know Fenton Township has lots of partnerships. Just watching that water pipeline come through is pretty exciting, and the collaboration that happened between municipalities is a really promising way to do business. Investing in infrastructure, again, water pipeline, but also supporting schools. Those are really important things to making sure that you're creating a great place to bring a business and to attract talent and people to live here. Partner with our Economic Alliance. We just met not too long ago with Mr. Lorraine and Broker, and we talked about some of the things that our team can help with. We're here to help businesses grow and work with them to navigate incentive programs, identify challenges that they might have with their own operations and workforce and help them do that. And there's no cost for that. But we're working with a lot of municipalities to help them figure out ways to grow. And be a destination. You're going to attract business. Are you going to attract talent, tourists? What do you want to be when you grow up? Zone and invest accordingly. You're going to help us by deciding what you want to be, and all of those neighboring communities will kind of find their niche, but we need to all be heading toward the idea that we want to be prosperous, we want to grow. And there is a mindset shift. In my entire lifetime living in Genesee County, it's been on the decline. We're going to be heading, hopefully, into a space where we're on the upswing. We've been traumatized a little bit. We've seen businesses leave. We've got to look for the ways that we're going to take advantage of the growth that's coming. We've got to get out of our own way and not create a ton of barriers to that growth and help make sure that our folks have an easy access into that prosperity, that they are prepared for the jobs, that we've invested in our young people, that we've created that pathway and that communication and messaging about the opportunities here in Genesee County. And so that's my advice to you, but certainly not an all-encompassing list. You will find your way and you'll make your decisions as a municipality about how you can fit into this vision. I'm not going to go through all the rest of these. We can go right down to that last slide. If you happen to be on a board, a resident, feel free to take some time with those other recommendations. This is the website. Feel free to come take a look at it. You can find the rest of the data. There's a recording of this presentation if you need a refresher. The dashboard, we keep that updated. Every year we update those numbers. This is the 5-year anniversary of when we launched this project. So it's time to make the rounds, and we hope that you've taken something away from this and can help that inform some of your decisions. Does anyone have any questions?
Christina, thank you very much. It was a great presentation. I've seen it quite a few times over the years, whether it was at Ridgway's office or something,
That's
but I've
right.
seen it a lot. Does the board, anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Mhm.
I mean, you're saying the metrics for Genesee County has been down. Do you feel that if we had more jobs, that it would turn things around? You know, because I think that's what's gonna draw people to solve a lot of these problems, because it just seems we're on the bottom of everything. And as Genesee County, I just think that jobs is gonna kind of rectify a lot of these issues that we're having.
Yeah.
That's keeping us below board, and so.
It's both. So I would say in recent history, when we're working with employers, we're finding they're having a hard time filling the jobs that they have. So we actually need more people. And the challenge for the businesses is when the supply of people is low, they have to pay more because the competition to get the people into the large number of job openings means that they have to pay better, and they're competing. So we're seeing people move around for at least the lower wage positions. They're moving around frequently between businesses that are kind of low skill, low wage. So it's all, we have a debate. I say it's gears between business, talent, and place. My counterpart Tyler will say it's a three-legged stool. All of them have to move together. So you have to create jobs, but you have to have people, or else you're gonna throw off the wages. But those people are gonna want a place to live. So you have to be working all of those things at the same time. And I think we're gonna see the jobs, and that will bring the people, but we're gonna have a bottleneck on housing. We don't have enough space for people. So that's where a lot of our municipal work, our real estate development, those things are gonna be really important. Because even if we attract the jobs, and we're seeing pretty promising numbers of that, we've had a lot of job openings. I just moved back to the area, and it was very difficult to find a home. It took me 6 months to find a home. So housing will be something that's needed, even if we bring the jobs. Or else we're gonna see, and this is okay, we want Shiawassee County to do, they're our friends. Shiawassee, Livingston, Lapeer, they're growing because they had space to grow. We've gotta catch up in the space of housing. Jobs is really important as an attractor, but we gotta be prepared for when it attracts people.
Any other questions for Christina? Again, great presentation.
Thank you.
As always.
Anytime, if you need anything from our organization, my contact information's on the back. We're happy to meet, chat, talk about ideas. That's what we're here for.
All right, thank you so much, I appreciate it. All right, next business orders, expenditures. Are there any questions from the board regarding any of the invoices?
Tom, there's a 6,000 plus charge for software maintenance that's under ESRI. What is the software that costs $6,000 to maintain a year?
That's an annual license fee for our GIS.
GIS?
Yep.
Mapping for planning, assessing, DPW,
Yeah.
all the sewers on there.
No, I know we got a robust suite of that. I wasn't sure which one it was. I wouldn't have been shocked if it was BSNA, but the name threw me off, so that's understandable, I think. That's why we ask.
Any other questions on any of the invoices? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion regarding the payment of expenditures totaling $2,347,177.26 for payment.
I will move the expenditures for payment.
Second?
All right, motion has been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tom, will you please call the roll?
Krug is absent. Clark.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Gopel is absent. Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thanks, Tom. All right, the expenditures stand approved as presented. The next business order is public hearings. Tonight, we have none. Moving on to reports. We have an ordinance enforcement first quarter report. I'm sure we've all reviewed the report in our packets. Are there any questions or comments from the board regarding the ordinance enforcement first quarter report? All right, next, are there any committee reports to be made to the board this evening? Chief, I know it's not a committee report, did you want to talk about our new fire truck? Is he there? He might have left.
Mark's on there.
Oh, Mark's on there. Mark? Our fire chief and one of our trustees, Mark Gopel, is out looking at a new fire truck that was ordered about 18 months ago.
Hey guys, Mark here. No, we're still going over the kind of nickel and diming it, finding little things that Ryan wants to put on the truck and things we don't need. So it's going as expected. Probably finish signing the purchase agreement tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
All right, any questions or comments for Mark? Oh, he's on there. Thanks, Mark.
Yes, sir.
All right, next business order is communications. We have none this evening. Moving on to adoption of ordinances. This is the rezoning of R24-005, Andy 8th, parcel number 06-21-400-003, This is Silver Lake Road, R3 to C2 with conditions. This is the second reading and the vote on the adoption. Again, this is the second reading of a proposed zoning ordinance amendment to rezone vacant land on Silver Lake Road from R3 to C2 with conditions, which was introduced at the April 1st meeting. Our zoning administrator, Mike, is here to...
Sure, I can give you a quick summary of what we talked about last meeting. So we have a request for a conditional rezoning. It would be to allow marine service and sales at this parcel, right? That would include support the use of new and used boat sales, boat repair, and other supporting equipment to have there, including trailers, forklifts, man lifts, etc. And then as a special use, right, would be outdoor storage. So when we look at rezonings, right, we start with the master plan, and this area of the master plan was identified as community commercial. And community commercial kind of looks at servicing an area greater than just the immediate area. When you consider a use of marine sales, right, it would serve the entire community, right? It serves the boating community as a whole from the township and the area. Site-specific issue or items, right? We look at the infrastructure, right? There is a sewer force main that goes right in front of this property. Unfortunately, they're not able to tap into it. So when you look at sewer availability, it's about 900 feet would be the closest sewer line they could connect to. For water, recently Township approved water that would be coming close to here, right? I think it would stop LaFontaine's property, which is just west of the DPW property, right? So it's within a couple hundred feet, not within necessarily the 300 feet we would typically look at, right? Then state bank pathway should be moving forward at some point in the not so distant future on the south side of Silver Lake Road. Silver Lake Road itself, right, is a county thoroughfare, right, intended to handle heavier traffic. Planning Commission held multiple meetings to review the request, right? When I first came in, they came in with a straight rezoning to C3. Planning Commission highly recommended that the applicant revise their application, right? That a straight rezoning to C3 wouldn't be compliant with the master plan, and the potential uses that could go in there wouldn't necessarily be compliant with the surrounding development of the area with the existing neighborhoods and whatnot. The applicant resubmitted their application, right, as a conditional rezoning. After multiple meetings reviewing the conditional rezoning, we have what you have in front of you today. The Planning Commission has made a recommendation for denial of the rezoning request. The basis for that is that the applicant has started storing boats on site after the application was made and before any decisions were made. So he's not in compliance with the current zoning ordinance. Part of the discussion was, this is a conditional rezoning, right? So there are restrictions on this property that would be greater than under a typical rezoning. And if the applicant's not complying with the ordinance as it is, what guarantees do we have that the ordinance would be complied with moving forward? So part of your determination, right, is compliance with the master plan, how the use fits in with the area. You have a conceptual site plan and conceptual renderings in the packet. Those are concepts, right? If this were to be approved, right, it would still have to go through the special use permit process and site plan review process. The options that you have tonight, right, you make your determination on compliance with the master plan. You can approve the request. You have the ability to deny the request, and you could also send it back to the Planning Commission for further discussion. I'm here to answer questions you guys have. The applicant's here, and I believe there's some residents from the area that may want to make some comments tonight.
Thanks, Mike. Before I look to the audience, as everyone knows, our treasurer, John Tucker, sits on that planning commission. I usually like to hear, and I'm sure the rest of the board would like to hear what you got.
Thanks.
Your thoughts.
So I was at almost all of these hearings as we went through the process, and I think Mike has did a good job of condensing it down for you. I was not here when the final recommendation was made, but it was 6-0. And I think the question that you have to ask yourself is a fairly simple one. I don't think it's as complex as all of the stuff that we have, and it has to do with the non-compliance. I personally have struggled with that. It's been raised by other people on occasions. I don't know if there ought to be a default rule for that kind of a scenario. I don't know. We could probably talk about it and debate about it all you want. I think the conditions that the applicant has finally gotten down to, and it took a little while to get there, is something that could be approvable and be consistent with the master plan. But we have this overlay of non-compliance. And as the municipality, we can look at it a certain way, and I'm not gonna tell you how all to think about it. You can all have your own opinions about that or not have about that. But I was, I don't know, I'm not sure how to react. Mr. Morgan, who's on the Zoom, by the way, had sent us an email with a picture that shows what he says is 15 to 20 boat trailers being loaded onto the property. Now, I don't know. We'll talk to the applicant to see what that is about. But the reason I raise it is our residents' perception. We always try and work with folks that are not in conformity with the ordinances. We try to get compliance. This is kind of part of that process. But to the residents, the perception from Mr. Morgan is that we haven't done anything. And that isn't true. We know this, but our residents don't necessarily know that. So I think this boils down to how you feel about the non-compliance, because I think it's not a bad spot for this use. I also think that if it became compliant and another application came in, you might get a different decision. I don't know. I wasn't there for the last one. There's still some potential for residual of the concept to play around. Or you might simply say this is a better resolution than the non-compliance situation we have now, and we'll enforce the criteria, or we'll be Jackal, have some things to do. So, at the end of the day, I think it's just how you feel about that issue. That's what I think.
Question.
Answer.
Before I,
Word or two.
in your opinion, since you went through the process except for the last one, I understand the non-compliance. If this applicant would have came in, there was no issue with the property, with the same concept, in your opinion, do you think this would have passed? And I know that's a tough question because I'm asking you to speak for a board.
Yeah, and I wasn't even there when they had the vote, and so Mike might be a better one to ask, but if you ask my opinion, I would guess the result and the recommendation would be different.
So, again, another question. It's like, I guess what you're asking us to consider, or the planning commission, by sending this to us, and I want to refer to Christine also, but it's like your dog doing something bad on the lawn, but it was 2 days ago and you're trying to punish him today. I mean, the dog doesn't understand. I understand now. I don't know if he's, knowing he's not in compliance and he's still piling boats on there, then that's an issue. But again, my concern is that are we punishing someone for not being in compliance when really it's not a bad idea? I'm not saying it is. I'm not gonna show my hand on how I vote. I'm just saying that, to me, there's a lot of things in our master plan when water and sewer, and water's on its way. I mean, there's a lot of uses that could be there that could be a lot worse than this.
Yeah, I don't think the objection is to the use. And I would tell you, in 40-odd years they've been doing it, I've been to a lot of different municipalities. There are a number of them that as soon as you mention the word of non-compliance, whatever it is done. They have that as a standing rule.
Okay.
So that's not out of line to have that kind of reaction. I've seen it, I've thought about it. I'm not a big bright line guy myself. I'm a more facts and circumstances sort of thing. And here, the facts and circumstances are understandable. I'm not sure that they excuse what's happened, but he had a change in his business and he wanted to continue the business. He had land available to do it. It just wasn't zoned for it. So he did what he needed to do with respect to his business. That's understandable. Whether that's an excuse or not, again, I'll leave it up to you. This is diving far more into morality issues than what we normally deal with. It's probably a bad characterization, but you get what I'm trying to say anyway.
Can I ask you a question, John?
Yeah.
What do you see, what is the biggest objection that you're having?
Well, the objection is that he is proceeding with the use without the zoning for it. And right now, that violates the ordinance as it's in play with respect to that property now.
And that's everyone's complaint.
I think that was the objections of the planning commission. Early on, we had issues with the conditions and things, but I think it was a painfully slow and long process, but I think we got to a point where I think everybody was comfortable with the conditions.
Yeah, I think part of it was, when the application was first made, right, there wasn't an issue with the storage of boats, right? It happened while we were going through the process. I think conceptually, right, if this were backwards, right, and the boats were there, right, we would write a violation letter, right? All right, well, what's the method for compliance? Well, you rezone the property, right, and go through the process. But this is a little bit different, right? He started going through the process, and then he came into non-compliance. So
So you can argue he knew, because he was doing the process, but he jumped the gun. And he'll tell you, I didn't think it was gonna take this long, and those are the kind of stuff he'll tell you. I get it, because, most people don't run into this sort of thing every day, and this one was a lot longer than most of them from that standpoint.
So essentially, instead of asking for permission, he's asking for forgiveness.
Exactly. And I've seen.
Well, he started asking for permission, and then he's asking for forgiveness, right?
Yeah.
So normally it's,
Right. Right.
Any other questions from the board? Christine? John is, again, another question. Would you recommend maybe we send this back to the planning commission and give them an opportunity to,
Well,
or is the planning commission want us to make a decision? Because to me, I usually look to our planning commission for a recommendation. And I'm a little confused on this recommendation, so.
What they want is compliance. So if the applicant were to go back and the property was in compliance and submit the same request, I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe it would be a recommendation for approval.
Then we're talking about compliance, we're not talking about the use. And that, to
Yeah,
me,
no,
it shouldn't be here to this board.
Yeah.
It should be coming to this board because of the use and making a decision on
Yeah.
that, not on a compliance issue. And that's why I would like someone, maybe it'd be you, that we send it back to the planning commission and then have them come back. But if you don't want to, if we want to move forward, that's
Yeah,
fine.
well, I don't think their position will change, but I can certainly.
Doesn't it give him the
it would
opportunity to
give
come
him-
into compliance?
Yes, oh,
And if
absolutely.
it comes back here again and it's not in compliance, then I'm done.
Okay.
I mean, that's,
I don't have a problem with that.
Is he in compliance right now?
Nope.
no.
No, and there's an argument, I don't know, I mean, he'll tell us what he was doing here, but there's an argument that he made it look more non-compliant on Friday. I don't know what's going on there, but it is a truckload of what appears to be boat trailers, and maybe they're there to get all the boats off, in which case, what Vince is suggesting will probably take care of the solution in fairly short order. If it's not that, it's probably gonna be another question that has to be addressed and resolved.
I guess I'm looking to you for advice. I mean, what's the other board's, do you want to just hold the vote, or do you want to send it back? This is the first time this has happened. I've been on this board for a long time. I mean, this exact situation.
I suppose if we send it back, you're basically sending a message that you need to.
That's steering.
You need to tell the applicant to come into compliance, so he'd have to move everything off, then they consider it, and then if it passes, he could move everything back up. I don't know that would sways my decision.
Okay, I'm just,
Yeah, I have a different question, totally unrelated to anything. This is a rezoning, yes?
Yes.
4 votes?
Ordinance adoption is 4 votes.
4 votes, just,
So your applicant may want to be asked that question that you asked me.
I was waiting to find out what your thought.
In light of, you gotta have 4 or 5.
Right.
And I'm gonna tip my hand because I'm gonna back my planning commission. So if
If the applicant would like to come up, would you like to address the board? we're giving you an opportunity, because I think you can feel the
Yeah,
vibe of the board.
I feel it. Andy Heath, Silver Lake Road, I'm the applicant. Yeah, the trailers on Friday were a little unexpected. I ordered that stuff way in advance, and they're from Missouri. But they are in part to help get the boats out of there. As of today, compared to last month, when the Planning Commission made the recommendation based on non-compliance, there's less boats there today than there was then. So progress is happening to clear it out. I still will say that I think it's a backward step to come into residential compliance, to get into commercial compliance. And I've showed you what I'm doing. It's not anything different than I'm asking for. I'm not gonna surprise everybody and turn it into a general RV. So at this time, I'd like a motion to send it back to the Planning Commission and get their recommendation so that you know, don't have to go against the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Somebody want to make that motion? Or do you just want to?
I'll make the motion that,
Yes, you have, I don't know if you want to do that or not, but,
Oh.
No.
Yeah.
okay.
I really don't want to take public comment for it and send it back.
Okay.
They can make their public comment at the Planning Commission meeting.
Okay.
so I'll make a motion that we send this application back to the Planning Commission for reconsideration.
Thanks, Chris.
Second.
Motion's been moved and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Tom, will you please call the roll?
Reed,
Yes.
Gopel is absent, Tucker,
Yes.
Kessler,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Krug is absent, Clark.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thanks, Tom. All right, moving on to the next business order is unfinished business. This is the adoption of the revised resolution number 2025-13, confirmation of revised Haddon Street Improvement Special Assessment Role. Tom?
Okay, the last hearing, one of the questions raised on the project was referring to the small piece of the project that involved Grove Park Road, about a 200-foot stretch. And my comment was, I will double check it. And when I double checked it, sure enough, it was wrong. I had assumed, mainly because the cost was so close to the 2-year-old estimate, that the number the county provided was just for the Haddon section. It was actually for everything, including the part that we're paying, the $63,000. So the end result is the total per share assessment is now only $10,414, about 900 lower than the 2-year-ago estimate and 1,288 lower than what we approved 2 weeks ago. Still 15 years with interest. And so when I consulted our bond counsel, he said, you don't need to rehear it because you're reducing the amount. Just make sure the residents know the change. We always send a confirmation letter telling them, here's your assessment. You have until this date to pay without interest. I'll make sure an explanation of the change is in there in those letters when they go out. So what we have is a revised roll that reduces their assessments pretty considerably, and a resolution to confirm that revised roll.
Good news for Haddon Street residents. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
One thing I would point out, if we hadn't caught it now, it would have been caught when the construction was done. We would have been way under budget, and we would have reduced everybody's assessment anyway. But in this case, we're getting it up front, so that's a good thing.
All right, thanks, Tom. All right, hearing none, revised resolution number 2025-13. Tom, will you please present the resolution?
Yes, resolution 2025-13 revises the total assessment amount in the per share assessment, confirms the revised special assessment roll 2025-03 is the assessment roll for the Haddon Street Improvement Special Assessment District, divides the assessment into 15 annual installments with the first installment due December 1st, 2025, sets the interest rate at 1% above the average interest rate on the bonds sold to finance the project, provides an early payoff option and assesses a 1% per month penalty on late installments, directs the clerk to deliver the special assessment roll with warrant attached to the treasurer, directs the treasurer to collect the special assessments, and repeals any conflicting resolutions.
All right, thanks, Tom. Okay, I'll entertain a motion regarding the adoption of resolution number 2025-13 as presented.
I would move to adopt the resolution as presented.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Tom, will you please call the roll?
Clark,
Yes.
Kessler,
Yes.
Krug is absent, Gopel's absent, Tucker,
Yes.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries, resolution is adopted.
All right, thanks, Tom. Next order of business is new business. This is the CDC WWS Water System Agreement, Ripley Road Extension. I'm sure you've reviewed the memo in the packet, the letter from Redwood, and the reason why I'm bringing this back, Tom and I had a conversation. If you remember, there was 2 condition proceedings in order for me to sign the contract. For this section anyway, the section going to Chateau, we already received that. We set up the special assessment district. There was 2 conditions. One was that they either prepaid their tap fees and or they got through the planning. Well, both of those are going to take considerable amount of time. The letter basically is saying we are moving forward. I feel comfortable. And again, even if something happened, we could still stop the process. I mean, it's because planning's probably going to take, Mike, oh, he's not here. Planning's probably going to take 4 months, and they're not even going to be probably receiving the water for over a year. To ask them to pay $500,000 to the township, I think is unreasonable. Those were my ideas. Tom and I had talked about it. I think it was a little bit of an overstretch. So basically I went to them because, again, the board's approved the section going down to Chateau. Well, we have to approve this section in order to get it down to Chateau. So basically this letter is saying, and I've talked to their engineer, I've talked to their COO, and they said this project is moving forward. So I'm just asking the board now, with what we have now, is to reconsider and allow me to sign the contract so we can start the engineering. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
The only question I had to do with the letter, it talks about the tap fees. That's a per unit fee, I presume?
Yes.
Yes.
Didn't say that, but
Yeah.
I just wanted,
And they know that.
don't like making assumptions.
They know the number.
Yeah, yeah, and
But again, they haven't
Right.
been through planning, so they don't even know, you know,
Right.
they went from 120 some, now they're at 90 some, they don't, until it gets through that, it's gonna be a considerable amount of time, but I feel very comfortable at this point, and again, it's gonna take a lot of time to get through the engineering phase of this anyway.
Right.
You know, we could probably ask Melissa, but probably 6 months or more, so it'll give them plenty of time to get through planning, things like that, so again, we can still stop the project, so it's not like, you know,
Well, given that we've already committed to the second leg,
we,
we're kind of left, you know,
Have to
we could build that in, yeah, we run a hose between the two of them.
Two of 'em.
You know, so I understand, I don't like doing it this way, but I understand why it makes sense to do it that way.
and again, I think it was a little strict of what I put on them last time, but I just wanted to, I wanted to
You want the
give.
you want the outs, you want the
I-
options.
Yep.
You want the flexibility, so.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, I will entertain a motion regarding the proposed Ripley Road Water Main Extension Agreement with Genesee County as presented.
Make a motion for approval as presented.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Tom, will you please call the roll?
Goebel is absent. Tucker?
Yes.
Lorraine?
Yes.
Clark?
Yes.
Krug is absent. Reed?
Yes.
Kessler?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next under new business is appointments to Parks and Recreation Advisory Board and compensation for the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board members. Mike, will you review?
Yeah, you know, it's been an interesting process. I think we take for granted the fact that the Township Board, Planning Commission, Zoning Board have been in effect forever, and all the effort that goes into creating those boards is there's a lot to it. So we have to finish our appointments, right? We've appointed 7 out of the 9, right? So we have the final 2 here. We have Julie Williams from Lake Fenton Community Schools. And then we have Jamie Welsh as a representative of the Keepers of the Shiawassee River and a whole bunch of other waterways and river groups. We had our first Parks and Rec meeting last week, and I thought it went pretty well. They adopted bylaws and made some recommendations that we'll talk about in a minute here. Jamie was at the meeting and provided some comments and provided a little bit of history about herself. But I think at this point, right, we need to get those final 2 appointments, and then we realized, hey, you know, we should probably pay our Parks and Rec Board similar to the Zoning Board and Planning Commission. So that is the second recommendation on there.
Thanks, Mike.
Yep.
Any questions or comments from the board? And again, you know, go ahead. Well, we are aware that the township does have some property. We've got a lot of plans for those properties. And I think that separation and creating this park board is what municipalities do as they grow. We've got Podunk, we've got the dog park, we've got a lot of things that we want to develop. And I think think having an independent Parks and Rec committee is the right way to go. And again, they would be bringing any recommendations to this board. So we would still have the final say, but they can do all the work.
Well, we're getting too busy for
Well,
a lot of this. I mean, we talk about future growth. I mean, we're experiencing it. We're seeing it now at the front end of this. It's coming through the door.
Any other questions or comments from the board? Okay, I will entertain a motion regarding the appointment of Julie Williams to the Fenton Township Parks and Recreation Board for the term ending March 31st, 2028.
I'll make a motion to appoint Julie Williams to the board.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tom, will you please call the roll?
Kessler.
Yes.
Krug is absent. Reed.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Opel is absent. Motion carries.
Thanks, Tom. All right, next I will entertain a motion regarding the appointment of Jamie Welch to the Fenton Township Parks and Recreation Board for the term ending March 31st, 2026.
I will make the motion to appoint Jamie Welch to the advisory board.
I'll second it.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tom, will you please call the roll?
Tucker.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Opel is absent. Kessler.
Yes.
Reed.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Krug is absent. Motion carries.
And again, just to remind the board, the pay for this is the same as we have for all our other boards in planning. All right, next I will entertain a motion regarding the recommendation to set the compensation for members of the Fenton Township Parks and Recreation Board at $120 per meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve the compensation at $120 per meeting.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tom, will you please call the roll?
Lorraine.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Kessler.
Yes.
Opel is absent. Tucker.
Yes.
Krug is absent. Reed.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thanks, Tom. Next under new business is the feasibility study proposal, Fenton Township Regional Park. And our zoning administrator, Mike's going to explain.
A really great first task for the Parks and Rec Board is to update the Parks and Rec plan. Right? The best Parks and Rec plans are something that you can actually follow through on and do. And part of that, for parks especially, is the funding aspect of it. So Paper Crane has a proposal here that is essentially doing about 75% of the Parks and Rec plan, with a focus on the funding, whether it's through grants, crowdsource, private-public partnerships. They have a full plan out there for identifying the funding and writing this plan to be ready-made to apply for these different areas of funding. A strong part of this plan is public participation and reaching out to various groups, doing interviews, holding public meetings and identifying a vision. That last 25% is something that we can do in-house very easily. So the Parks and Rec Advisory Board has made a recommendation to accept the proposal. The funding for it will be coming from the line item in the planning and zoning budget for consultants. It would be for $25,000, and essentially the end product is going to be a plan that we can start using to actually fund improvements for Park and Recs in the township.
Thanks, Mike. That's a good explanation. I just want to give a little history. I think it's been like 3 years, no, 2 years, 2022. Yeah, a little more than 2 years. I came to the board and asked the board about hiring some grant writers, and the board supported that decision. And I have some preliminary numbers just before we take this vote. I think it's important, and it's important for our residents to understand too. Since 2022, we have spent $51,900 paying Paper Crane, our grant writers. To date, we received in the bank $478,000, and there's another $400,000 that will be in our bank account in 2025. So when you're talking about $878,000 of money that we wouldn't have had, they are great, they're good, and I think it's really important that the board considers it. And again, these aren't even, this is what's hit our account, but the Kildy grant that we went out and got was for $970-some thousand. Yes, we had to split it with another municipality, but again, they are earning their money almost tenfold.
See, the ROI is pretty good.
The ROI is real good. And I've never reported, I told you I was gonna do that every year, and I forgot last year, so I guess I'm giving you a mid-report.
we should actually have them charge us more, because we're making 10 times,
Excuse me.
right?
No.
Oh, did the treasurer say that? Never mind,
Only
strike
the
that.
ROI is the same.
Yeah, that's right, you gotta hold the ROI the same.
All right, are there any questions or comments from the board?
So, Mike, they would be focused just on the one park under this agreement, or would they look more
They're gonna be looking at parks as a whole.
throughout the township?
No, I think
Okay.
focus will be on the regional park, but,
Right.
I mean,
Podunk.
this process is gonna,
Yeah, Podunk.
is gonna
But they will
include,
consider all
Oh,
of those
yes.
little pieces that we
Oh,
have?
yes.
Okay.
Now, I'm confused, is the feasibility study gonna cover all that?
Yes.
Or, I know the group is, but the feasibility study is gonna look at everything?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
all right. Didn't understand that.
All the
I-
properties,
I
yep.
thought it was the
Yeah.
dog park.
So it's essentially creating a funding strategy, right? And then through the public participation part, right, the interviews that they're gonna be conducting, it's gonna cover both, all the various projects that we're gonna identify.
And also, Tom, this is really in our budget anyway, right?
Yes. We
So
have-
it's in our budget. It's already really in the budget, but we're still coming to you again. Because if it was in my, I've asked you for a certain budget, it's in there, but I thought since this is a large sum and for informational purposes also, letting the board know exactly where this,
Well, I think it's good as we go along, because it took a leap of faith to do it. It's not really faith anymore, we got results.
We know.
So, but that can change too, so I think it's helpful to have a periodic, where do we set, kind of thing. So-
and I will plan on then, probably Q1 of every year, I'll give you an update or anytime you ask.
Yeah.
Tom will be ready to give you those numbers, right, Tom?
And it's my understanding, from working with Southern Lakes on different projects, is that these projects have to be at a certain point, or at least the feasibility of it needs to be at a certain point to even apply for some of these grants and things. You can't just pie in the sky, well, we'd love to go do X, and they're gonna give you a grant for it. You have to have it at a certain stage of planning.
Yeah, and that's why it's a multifaceted funding approach that they're proposing, right? It's not just the state grants, but, one thing that all these applications require is, well, what's the public input, right? What have you vetted with the public? And that is, like, we're going above and beyond what you will see typically in Parks and Recs plans.
This is gonna prepare us, Christine, to be able to do the big things that I wanna do.
Yeah.
The ones that, you can go to DC and knock on the door. You have to be well prepared, and you
Yes.
have to be, we wanna be so far ahead of other municipalities that when they look at our ask, they understand the ask, and then when I knock on their door, we knock on the door as the township, that, they open that door and give us our money.
Yeah,
Or
I
give us
think
the
the
money.
key is to show that you're serious and you're ready to move forward.
We're
with
investing.
developments. You're not just thinking about it, you're well down the road.
They're gonna give us the tools to be able to do what we need to do
Yeah, I like
in
it.
the future. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion regarding the proposal from Paper Crane to conduct a regional park feasibility study at a cost of $25,000.
I'll make a motion that we approve the proposal as presented.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Operations Manager Roker, will you please call the roll?
Kessler.
Yes.
Copel is absent, Krug is absent, Reed.
Yes.
Lorraine.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, next, the Hogan Road Boat Launch property, and Mike, you're on again.
So we've been talking about the boat launch that's being done by the Keepers of Shiawassee off of Hogan Road that is currently on Water and Waste property. But Water and Waste wanted to deed us the property for $1. In order to do that, we need a legal description and a sketch, right? Roe has been doing all the site work, site planning for the boat launch, so we've asked them to create a proposal to do that paperwork. Parks and Rec Advisory Board has made a recommendation to approve the proposal and move forward with transferring that part of the property into the township's name.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions or comments from the board?
Question and a comment. First of all, a comment, the price of charging is incredibly cheap, so I've seen a lot of it. It is,
Yeah.
that shouldn't cause anybody any kind of pause, but the reason that the county wants to deed it to us is they don't want to carry the liability. So my question is, Tom, are we gonna have coverage if we take title to that and it's operated as a boat launch?
We would have to let our insurance company know.
No.
But yes, we would be covered.
you don't think any significant change to premium as a result of
I
that?
would not expect it.
I think we talked to them as part of the grant also, because there's grant funding associated with it that we became responsible for as the, so I think it's already been addressed once, but we can definitely follow up on that.
This be under the purview of the Parks and Rec Board?
Yes.
Any other questions or comments from the board? All right, hearing none, I will entertain a motion regarding the proposal from Rowe Professional Services to prepare a legal description and land sketch for the proposed Hogan Row boat launch site as presented.
I will move that we approve payment of $800 for the legal description and $650 for the sketch for the proposed boat launch property on Hogan Road.
Second.
All right, motion's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Tommy, please call the roll.
Lorraine,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Krug is absent, Kessler,
Yes.
Gopal is absent, Tucker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thanks, Tom. All right, the next business order is board comment. Is there anyone on the board who has additional comments or concerns?
I will comment that the new motion protocol takes longer.
Well,
Yes.
I was gonna speak up because
We're getting better.
you're making it too complicated, because the way Vince is phrasing the request for a motion, all you have to say is motion to approve.
Approve.
All right, so you fed us what we need, is what you're
Yes.
telling us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we're not eating it.
No.
Okay.
You're
All right.
getting too verbose.
We're making our own.
I was waiting for
making our
Tom
own
to say
meal.
something, yeah, because Christine sounded so perfect. It sounds like she was sitting in a congressional seat somewhere.
Motion to approve is all you need to say in all of them, not pretty much all of those.
Me confused.
So it's
Or
my
to
fault.
deny.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, we're expecting.
Or not, yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
But don't you have to say both, approve or deny?
No.
Motion to
No.
approve or deny, just say motion to approve and that's it.
Or motion to deny. You can go either way if you want, because that's the way I'm phrasing it.
Typically, our board doesn't make motions to deny, even if they know it's not going to pass, they'll vote.
They'll make a motion
They'll
to
motion
approve.
to
The
approve
motion
and then
fails,
just
then
vote
it's
it down.
denied. So it's
Exactly.
6-1.
This was basically a recommendation from Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Chad.
Confused the board after 15 years.
Been doing this a long time, I gotta think about it.
All right. Anything else, any additional comments or concerns from the board? All right, next business order is public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. We will now open up the meeting for public comment on agenda or non-agenda items. Is there anyone here present that would like to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items? If you do, please come up. All we'd ask you to do is please state your name. Amy, how are you?
Good. So I'd sent a few emails, and I didn't get any response from anybody. So I'm here to talk about my questions. Did any of you get them, read them, see them? It's concerning my short-term rental. I was very confused and surprised with the owner occupancy requirement. I wasn't prepared to even discuss that because I had zero idea that that was even going in there, as I had attended many of the meetings and it really wasn't talked about except for one time. And then that was at the very beginning stages and it went away. And so when I came for my special use permit, they brought that to my attention and I wasn't prepared to answer on that. So we postponed their decision for me to either decide to apply for a variance or ask for clarification from the board. I then went back and read through all minutes, listened to all Zoom meetings that were on the website. I heard your comments. I understand exactly what you had put in there. So I had asked for a reconsideration of that, as many of you had said during the planning process that this ordinance wasn't written in stone, that we would probably be making changes. I feel that my neighbors do complain a lot about everything, and a lot of times it's me that's making the noise that they don't, and I mean, I don't do it on purpose, but I just feel like I haven't had any legitimate issues. There's never been a police officer at my house when there's a renter there. It just hasn't been anything that would force the requirement of, owner being on
feedback before I make a decision as to what I do. Obviously I can shut this down and, you know, make all of these people who had planned to come to Fenton for vacation this year, make other plans. I hate to do that, it breaks my heart. There's people that have been coming for 3 years in a row, and this is what they, you know, but I don't have any control over that, I understand that. So I mean, I'm just looking for some feedback.
Amy, I'll apologize, not because I didn't respond, but there's, you know, I follow like a
I know.
workflow, and I thought that since it was a planning and a ZBA issue, that Mike would have responded, and I don't want to throw Mike under the bus either, so, but it was my understanding that someone did get back to you. So for that, I apologize. The board voted on STRs, what, about 8 months ago? So, I mean, as far as what the ordinance is, it's been out there for more than 8 months, Amy, so I don't know why during the application process, it was when you just found out. Because if I had an STR, I would have known as soon as we made the ruling, when the board adopted it. And if you want my opinion, I guess that's what you're asking for, I've spent a lot of time, the board spent a lot of time. The process we went through, I think, was one of the most extensive. It was almost 2 years. One of the reasons I went to the last MTA conference was to talk to lawyers to make sure that the ordinance, what other municipalities were doing. And Amy, and again, I can only speak for Michigan and the people that I've talked to. But if you go out and look at municipalities, and maybe you have some in some municipalities that this hasn't happened, but the majority, and I'm speaking to an audience that can watch me on YouTube all over the country, what we did here was well thought out, and it's how most municipalities are moving. I mean, if you take a look at areas, I always point to Traverse City because that's where everybody wants to go. And, you know, they started out, now they're only in commercial. They're all reverting back. Now there's different riparian municipalities, like Torch Lake is one, where you actually can have 1,500 feet or more between houses, and some portions of that in some municipalities, I think that lake expanded, according to the attorney, like 5 municipalities. And each one is different based on the concentrations of the homes. And I think the board has done a very good job. As far as the tweaking, yes, I think when I was up there, we were one of the very few municipalities that hasn't made a tweak because we were so conservative in our decision on what to do. And I think that those boards or those municipalities that were more lenient, because of all the problems that the STRs had caused in certain areas, have converted to basically what we're doing here. So that may not be the opinion of the whole board, but if you want to know mine, it's nothing personal whatsoever. As a riparian here, I just don't think this type, I mean, I think there's areas in what we did in ag or in commercial, I think it belongs there, or it can belong there. I don't think it belongs in a residential area. That's just my thought. So the process was set up, so if you want to go to and get a variance, there's a process there. And that's why I thought that Mike had gotten back to you and said, because from your letter, you were already in that process.
Well,
so I apologize. If you wanted me to pick up the phone, I apologize. But that's what you would have heard from me if I picked up, or if I would have called you.
So if I can answer a few of the things that you
Sure.
did bring up.
Sure.
First of all, you mentioned that it's been passed for 8 months. How did I not know about it? And I did. I clearly read the ordinance, and it clearly said owner occupied. And my advisor, who is an attorney, clearly said that means you have to own the home, that it is your residence, that you're not just ABC rental company coming in and renting a bunch of houses. So I felt I was covered there. To give that a little more traction, through the checklist, through the application, there was 0 mention of me being there, owner actually being on property. The inspector came to my home to view everything. There was no conversation about where are you gonna be when the renters are here. There was nothing that gave me reason to think twice about what my attorney had advised, was just that I owned the property. So that's how I was blindsided by that fact, because There was nothing in any of the other documentation or application or that spoke to that specific fact. Okay, so that's to answer your question as to how I didn't know.
Okay.
I understand about being strict in the beginning so we don't have any problems, but we're talking about minuscule number of homes compared to the population of Fenton Township. And I thought that we were moving towards, let's allow people that are doing it to continue doing it, and violations will then be subject to revocation of their permit. I feel like, at the beginning we talked about, are we gonna just ban it, or are we gonna let it happen? And you guys made it very clear you didn't just wanna ban it, but I feel like you just banned it. I have a spot I have a loft above my garage. I don't personally wanna be in somebody's vacation. I don't. So that's my decision that I have to make, but I also can, if my heart feels that I don't wanna ruin these people's vacation for this year, I can live at the upstairs in my garage. I can. I can. I don't have to apply for a variance. I can comply. My property does allow me to do that. I had just asked if there was any reconsideration of that fact. And then the second email that I sent after I didn't get a reply from the first one was there going to be some type of, period. We put this into place, but there isn't anything that says, this has to be done within X amount of time. Do I have a transition period where, okay, I don't have to cancel my renters next week, but I do 2 months down the road, just so I could give them time to make other plans. We have to understand these people, and I know you guys don't care. I know you don't care, but these people have brought plane tickets. They've, planned to come for family vacations, to meet up with friends, families, go to weddings, whatever. And by me saying you can't stay here, it's going to throw a wrench in their life, in their plans. I'm not a mean person. I know they'll figure it out. There's a hotel up the road. They'll get something else. I get it. But I just have a hard time being that person, albeit if I need to. But that was my next question. Is there any steps, is there any plan in place as to, I got a year full of rentals. Are you guys giving me a month? Are you giving me nothing?
Let me address it, but I'll bring Mike up because he can define it probably better, the process. When we voted on it, that ordinance became effective, I think, Tom, how long?
It was 30 days.
30 days. So if it was 9 months ago, 8 months ago, that ordinance was there. So that would have been your time to say no more after that. However, we Mike and I said, there's gotta be a process. So that process is going to be, number one, we kind of felt that the main peak season was over, so we had a little bit of breathing time. There were notifications sent out saying, hey, we're gonna do this on this date starting, and again, I can bring Mike up. He's gonna be a lot better to address this, but you're asking us, is there a process? There is, and that's the process you're going through, and that's going through to get a variance, and you can tell your story to them.
Well, I guess I don't need a variance if I decide to comply to being on property.
Oh, correct.
Right? I just have to continue my application, which we postponed so that I could get further clarification from
Okay.
you.
Okay, yeah, if you're gonna be a resident of the home, at the time, and again, we're complaint-based, so if that's what you are going to put on your application, I guess that's, Mike, is there anything you wanna add, Mike? I'm trying to beat around these, cause I thought we had a process, and I don't know where that communication breakdown came with Amy.
How about this? So you guys adopted 2 ordinances, right? Zoning ordinance and a general ordinance, right? One of the goals of that was to not allow grandfathered uses, right? And review each application as it is. The way we handle code enforcement, right, is as long as you're going through the process, right, we stay our enforcement of that, right? It's similar to what we saw with the rezoning, right? He's not in compliance, but he's going through the process, and we're allowing the process to complete. Our take is it's similar to short-term rentals, right? The planning commission will review the application, make a determination, and at that time, if they're in compliance, then they'll be issued a permit. If they're not, then they have to come into compliance. If there is going to be any leeway or grace period, I imagine the planning commission could make that determination, but the intent from the township board was no, right? That's why it was done the way it was done. So.
Okay, thanks, Mike. All right.
I mean, I'd like to say something. You said your name's Cindy? Is it Amy? You know, I have a lot of VBRO properties myself all over Michigan. And, you know, we have them in Traverse City, and like Vince said, they passed a law there that we can't have VBRO rentals, and they don't even allow the resident to be there, you know, like we're allowing here. And, you know, I was very upset about the whole setup, but, you know, because up north, you know, it's a travel destination for many people, okay? And, you know, it's a weekend stay. And that was my problem, you know, that I have these properties up there and I can't run. These are weekend vacation rentals. But, you know, they put that into effect, and yes, I did have to reach out to all my clients and let them know that, you know, you're gonna have to there's a change of venue here. And, you know, they're a little upset, but, you know, it's not the end of the world because there's other places. And years ago, Lake Fenton used to be a point of destination. You know, people used to come from the south up here. But anymore today, this is more residential. They're not, you know, like vacation weekend rentals or people who just come in for the weekend. And so, you know, you just got to understand if you lived at the home and your neighbors every weekend, it was in and out, party, 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 you know, it'd get annoying after a while, you know, and you know, I was all, you know, for the VBRO and being able to rent, but as you know, you really think about it, if this is your residence, you wouldn't want to be bothered with your neighbors. And the homes on Lake Fenton are very tight, and so you know what's going on. You can hear the voice right through the walls, basically, they're so close. And, you know, I just think that, you know, the decision that was made by the board was the right way to go. Unfortunately, for us, there in VBRO Rentals, we're kind of, what do? We're in a stranglehold, essentially, but,
Thanks, Bill.
I understand that.
Guys, keep your voices down.
You know, the whole weekend rental party.
So,
party out is completely understandable. But that's not how I rent my property. I don't rent to weekend partiers whatsoever. But just to mention, you had brought up riparian rights and on the lake and whatnot. You know, we already clearly said the boats weren't included, and that's fine. But, I mean, how can we even have that concern when we're public? You see what I'm saying? I don't know how you can even say that there's a concern of allowing somebody to come and sleep at my home because we have riparian rights on Lake Fenton, yet it's a public lake. Anybody can come in, whether they're sleeping in my home or driving down the road. You know, that to me, my very commonsensical mind, I can't understand how we can make those two determinations and feel comfortable about it. Feel comfortable that we're not making changes to something to make those two make sense. The water part of it means nothing to me. I don't care if they go in the water or not. It doesn't make a difference.
Well, maybe you have a process. I mean,
I do,
you know,
I do.
the board's made a decision. We have an ordinance. We have two of them.
Again, I was just looking for an answer to the two questions that I emailed all of you and all of the planning commission, and I got no answer from anyone.
I will tell you, Amy, I never received anything from you.
Well,
I don't know why or where.
It was forwarded to the whole board,
I was gonna say, I think it came into our office and then Tom forwarded it to the whole board.
When was this?
probably a month ago.
this was the letter
It
that
was
she wrote, right?
2
Oh,
weeks ago.
It was
Forwarded?
an email.
Yeah.
There was
she wrote a
It
letter.
came
two
into the
emails.
info box and it was forwarded out to the board.
Yeah.
Mike forwarded it to the planning commission.
Well, in my mind, we are a board, and I don't feel like I should individually respond to a question that's directed to the board.
And I understand
whole.
that, and I've watched the agenda for the meetings for the last few weeks since I sent the email. I've watched the Zoom calls. Unfortunately, I can't be at every single one of these meetings or every single planning commission. I just don't have that time in my schedule. So I have taken it upon myself to review those things after the fact. There are no meetings and no Zoom from the last planning commission meeting available for me to review. So that's why I'm here tonight, because I don't know if they talked about it. I've got nothing on public site for me to view. So that's why I'm here tonight. That's why I was asking the question. You guys have given me your answer, and then I will make my decision. I thank you.
Okay. Thanks, Amy. Is there anyone else here that is in attendance that would like to address the board on either agenda or non-agenda items?
Noah Morgan, 15102 Pinewood Trail. I'd just like to kind of reiterate the frustration and, you know, of the property of Silver Edge LLC, the 4334 Silver Lake Road property that I've sent a formal complaint letter in now, on just lack of ordinance enforcement to the board. The property conveyed ownership in 2020. And since day one, that property's been out of ordinance. And several phone calls have been made to the township, and there's been no citation. There's been no, you know, there's been no process to stop the misuse of that property that was out of ordinance at that time. And then along came a master plan to change it from agricultural to commercial during that process when it was being used out of ordinance and also illegally. It's a little frustrating as a resident in this community that's very involved in this community to see that, you know, people live in the township for a lot of reasons, and one of them is a rural community, and we're getting more services pushed to be more and more like a city as housing development and medium density and high density construction rolls into neighboring communities that we want to be more like. I hear the reference a lot to, on this board particularly, Traverse City. We like the community that we live in. That's why we live here. There's a lot of things this community doesn't have because of, you know, lack of planning and listening. I've been on a committee now to get the pathway put in for 12 years. Hopefully one day we'll have that. But again, you know, that project went from $2 million to $5 million. So I'm not even sure whether that's a good use of public tax dollars, as the community already voted it down through a tax millage. It's frustrating to see that, you know, Mike Deem, I talked to you on Friday, and you told me the planning, the zoning board unanimously voted down that property being conveyed to commercial use district as outdoor storage or C2 or C3, whatever you guys are, you know, proposing it to. And then tonight we had a meeting that was steered towards going back to that committee and asking for a revote. So I just want that to be on public record.
Thanks, Noah. Is there anybody else that is on Zoom that would like to address the board on agenda or non-agenda items? If so, just unmute yourself. Cindy, Fire Chief?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Good, Chief.
So we're out here in Appleton, Wisconsin, and we are just about done with our specs, and things are rolling along. It's great having Mark out here. He's wide-eyed open, and I think he's really taking part. He's been really helpful in the process in decision-making. I was actually glad that we had a board member come. But we're just about done, and we're hopefully ready to get home and be home by about 2, 3 o'clock tomorrow.
Thanks, Chief. Anybody else? All right, hearing none, it's now 7:59 p.m. If there's nothing else, I say good night, and the meeting's adjourned.